I almost didn't open the door. It was 6:40 in the morning, still dark outside, and nobody should have been back in that section of the building. I had a full shift ahead of me and a thermos of coffee that was already going cold, but something stopped me. A smell, maybe, or the way the emergency light was bleeding red under the gap at the bottom of the door. Wrong color for that time of morning, wrong everything. I pulled it open. The heat came out first, a solid wall of it, the kind that steals your breath before you can even think. Dark room, red glow from the emergency strip on the ceiling. Metal shelves packed floor to ceiling, and there against the far wall, slumped like something that had just given up, was Ray's shirt soaked through. Face white as old concrete, not moving. Ray. I crossed the room in 4 steps and grabbed his arm. His skin was burning, his eyes cracked open. Wade. Just that. Barely a sound. I checked the thermometer bolted to the wall near the shelves. 101 degrees Fahrenheit. My watch said 6:47 a.m. I got my water bottle into his hands. He drank like a man who hadn't seen water in a day because he hadn't. How long? I asked. He looked up at the ceiling for a second. Since yesterday. After the meeting with Harmon. My name is Wade Calloway. I'm 49 years old. I put in 20 years at Ironside Valve and Pump Corp in Denton, Ohio, a mid-sized manufacturing town in the Rust Belt where the factory is basically the town. Quality control supervisor. Not a glamorous job, but steady work, good pay, and I knew every system in that plant down to the bolt level. I raised my daughter Lily mostly on my own after her mother left when Lily was 11. She was starting college in the fall. Pre-med, I had a plan. I had a life I'd built piece by piece over 2 decades. In that storage room at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning, those pieces started coming apart. Ray Alcott had transferred to Ironside about 6 months before all this safety and compliance specialist. Mid-40s, detail-oriented, the kind of worker who actually reads the operations manual instead of using it as a footrest. Smart guy, careful, asked a lot of questions. Management hated him for it. 3 weeks before I found him in that room, Ray sat across from me at lunch and said flatly they're building a case to push me out. His wife, Donna, had been dealing with a serious illness for over a year. The company health plan was the only thing keeping them from financial ruin. I just need to hold on until she stabilizes, he told me. I told him he was overthinking it. I was wrong about that. Ray told me everything while he finished the water. He'd found irregularities in the batch inspection records, pressure valves that had failed safety testing but received passing marks anyway. Those valves were already in the distribution chain, headed to hospitals, water treatment facilities, and 2 school districts. He brought it to Glenn Harmon, Regional Operations Director, and the man who ran Ironside like it was his personal property. Harmon listened, nodded, and told Ray to go verify some inventory in the back storage unit. Said he'd follow in 10 minutes. Then Ray heard the lock click. The storage unit had a heavy fire door, solid steel with sealed edges. The cleaning crew ran their industrial vacuums in the hallway outside that night. From behind that door, with that kind of noise, you wouldn't hear a human voice no matter how loud it got. Ray yelled until he had nothing left. Nobody came. I got him to urgent care. The doctor looked at Ray's chart, looked at me, and shook his head slowly. Severe dehydration. Heat exhaustion close enough to heat stroke that the difference was mostly luck. Another few hours, he said, and didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. While Ray was on IV fluids, I drove back to Ironside. Glenn Harmon was already there, standing in the main corridor, tie straight, expression neutral. He looked at me the way a man looks at a minor inconvenience he's already decided how to handle. There's been a misunderstanding, he said. The storage unit doesn't lock from the outside. I checked the thermometer, I said. 101 degrees. He was in there 14 hours. Ray tends to be. Harmon paused like he was choosing the word carefully. Dramatic. 2 other employees had stopped in the hallway behind me. Harmon shifted register instantly, voice going louder and warmer. Make sure he gets proper care, Wade. Company policy requires an incident report. I'll have it ready when you're back. I looked at him for a long moment. Long enough that he knew I wasn't buying any of it. Then I walked out. Ray and I submitted our resignations that afternoon. Harmon accepted them with a thin smile that stopped well short of his eyes. Small towns have long memories, he said. I hope you both land somewhere. I'd worked in that building for 20 years. I carried my things out in a cardboard box and drove home without turning on the radio. What happened next was predictable. If you've ever watched how small town power works, within a week, jobs I was more than qualified for stopped calling back. One hiring manager actually winced when he saw Ironside on my resume, closed the folder before I'd finished sitting down. Another position I'd applied for, a QC lead role at a plant 40 miles east, was listed as filled 2 days after I submitted my application. No interview, no call, nothing. I picked up freelance welding work to keep the bills paid. Night jobs, mostly fabrication for small contractors who didn't ask many questions. It was enough to cover rent and Lily's expenses, barely. She offered to delay school by a semester. I told her that was not happening. Ray faced the same wall. His certifications were solid, his record was clean, but every door in the regional industry seemed to close right before he reached it. He and Donna were burning through savings. Her treatment couldn't wait on a job search. Then they went after my father. Dad is 82, living at Meadowbrook Care Center, about 20 minutes from my house. He's had heart problems for 3 years, but he was stable. Well looked after, close to me. Then his insurance coverage got flagged for an internal audit. An administrative error, they called it. Suddenly there was paperwork suggesting a required transfer to a different facility, 3 hours away, better suited to his updated coverage tier. I drove to the nursing home that evening and sat with him for 2 hours without telling him what was happening. He talked about the weather and the baseball scores and asked how Lily was doing. I told him she was fine. Drove home and sat in my truck in the driveway for a long time. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number, Ohio area code. Mr. Calloway. My name is Zola Fenn. I worked accounting at Ironside until about 14 months ago. I think you remember me. I did. She'd been quiet, professional, kept to herself, left suddenly. Nobody in the plant had been told why. I've been watching what's happening to you and Ray, she said. I'd like to show you something. Can you come tonight? I drove to her house. On her kitchen table, she had a notebook and 2 file folders. She'd been keeping records for 4 years, starting around the time the previous ownership sold Ironside to the current parent company and Harmon got his directorship. She walked me through it calmly. Financial reports showing a maintenance and safety budget that existed on paper but was redirected every quarter. Inspection sign-off sheets with timestamps that matched no actual inspection dates on record. And a list of 9 former employees who had raised concerns internally and been systematically removed. 1 had been transferred to night shift in a different facility until she quit. 2 had been let go on performance grounds that nobody could substantiate. 1 had suffered a chemical exposure incident in a storage area and quietly settled. The pattern was not subtle once you could see the whole picture. Harmon had been doing this for years. Zola handed me a flash drive. Everything is on there, she said. The redirected funds, the falsified sign-offs. 4 years of it. She'd kept copies off-site the entire time. I left when I realized they were going to notice what I was documenting. I've been waiting for the right moment. Why now? I asked. Because you haven't quit, she said. Most people quit. I drove home with the flash drive in my jacket pocket, stopped at a gas station, bought a coffee, and sat in the parking lot thinking about my father in that care facility and Ray's wife in treatment and the list of 9 names in Zola's notebook. Over the next 2 weeks, something started taking shape. Zola connected me with former Ironside employees scattered across 2 counties. Imani Graves had worked shipping and kept personal logs of hazardous material handling that didn't match the official records. Ree Dalton had been in testing and held onto original inspection reports, the real ones, before they were altered and replaced in the system. A man named Holt Mercer had worked janitorial at Ironside for 18 years. He was invisible to management the way furniture is invisible. He heard everything. He knew where every camera blind spot was and which executives talked freely in front of the cleaning staff. It was Holt who told me about the Midwest Industrial Safety Summit. Ironside was hosting it in 9 weeks. State inspectors, industry regulators, executives from manufacturing companies across the region, and Glenn Harmon was the keynote speaker. The topic was safety as a core value in modern manufacturing. I sat with that information for a full day before I called anyone. Then I reached out to a name Ree had given me. Carl Maddox, State Industrial Safety Inspector out of Columbus. Ree said he'd been looking at Ironside for 2 years and couldn't move without direct witnesses willing to go on record. We met at a diner 40 miles from Denton. I put everything on the table, Ray's account, Zola's records, Imani's shipping logs, Ree's original inspection reports, the list of 9 employees. Maddox listened without interrupting. When I finished, he set down his coffee cup and looked at me steadily. The conference, he said. That's our window. Maddox explained it plainly. If violations were directly observed by state inspectors already present on site for the conference, that changed the legal footing entirely. It wasn't a complaint that could get buried in an internal review process. It became an active investigation on record, with witnesses who had authority. They've been cleaning the place up for weeks, I told him. Fresh paint, new signage, temporary walls in front of the problem areas. Then we need something that forces them to look past the cleanup, he said. I drove home and started thinking about the building. I knew that plant the way you know your own house after 20 years. Every system, every quirk, every shortcut that got taken during the last renovation. The main transformer that fed power to the cooling towers sat outside on the south side of the building. exposed to full sun from late morning onward. On a normal summer day, it ran warm. On a hot day with full occupancy, it ran very warm. The system was rated for the load, but just barely, and the maintenance logs, the real ones Ree had copies of, showed the cooling fins on that transformer hadn't been serviced in over 2 years. The weather forecast for conference day had been holding steady for a week. High of 96 degrees Fahrenheit, humid, the kind of July day in Ohio that makes the air feel thick before 9 in the morning. I spent 3 evenings working out the heat load, hundreds of people in a sealed building, the outdoor temperature climbing through the afternoon, and a transformer already running on deferred maintenance. If something reflected additional solar heat onto that transformer housing during peak load, the cooling system would go down, not from sabotage from physics. Ree helped me work out the panel angles. We used aluminum display boards, the kind vendors bring to trade shows, positioned against the temporary structures in the parking lot. Nothing that looked out of place at an industry conference, nothing that could be traced back to anything except sun hitting metal on a hot day. No forced entry, no tampering, just the building's own neglected systems doing what neglected systems eventually do. I also sent an anonymous letter to the Ohio Society of Engineers, describing the situation in general terms and suggesting the conference would be worth attending. 3 of their members showed up as independent observers, people Harmon had never met and couldn't account for. Imani had media contacts ready. 2 local TV crews and 1 investigative reporter from Columbus. 1 call and they'd be on site within 20 minutes. Then there was Nolan Harmon, Glenn's son, 26 years old, no manufacturing experience. Recently appointed junior operations manager, he was on the conference agenda as a speaker. Emerging leadership in industrial safety, his father's opening act. What the audience wouldn't know was that Nolan had signed a series of internal quality override forms, paperwork that allowed certain production batches to bypass secondary inspection checkpoints. The kind of authorization a junior manager gets handed when someone above him wants the decisions distributed, and the liability spread thin. Glenn had been using Nolan's signature on those forms for months. Ree had the originals. 3 batches of defective pressure valves had moved through on those overrides. The week before the conference, Harmon made 2 more moves. Holt got fired. An anonymous tip about missing supply inventory. The company searched his locker and his car, found nothing, and let him go anyway on the grounds that the accusation alone created a liability. The message was clear enough. They were narrowing the circle. And my father's insurance issue came back. A second flag, different department, same result. Transfer paperwork generated again. I called Imani's brother Tanner, who worked in health insurance software administration. He'd quietly resolved the first flag by making it look like a system error. This time, he locked the file at the administrative level and set up an alert if anyone touched it again. They can try, he said, but they'll be generating a paper trail every time they do. The night before the conference, I called Ray. He was staying at his sister's place. Donna was stable and responding to treatment, and he sounded like himself again, steady, a little tired, but present. "You sure you want to be there in person?" I asked. "We can do the video if it's easier. I've been sure since the day they locked that door," he said. I told him where to park and what time to arrive, kept it simple. After I hung up, I looked at the timeline I'd mapped out on the kitchen table. Transformer projected to hit critical temperature around 12:15, give or take, depending on cloud cover and building occupancy. Harmon's keynote was scheduled to start at 100. There was a narrow window in there where things would either go the way we'd planned or fall apart completely. I folded up the timeline, put it in my jacket pocket, and went to bed. I didn't sleep much, but that was fine. I'd been running on not much sleep for 2 months. One more night wasn't going to matter. At 5:30 in the morning, I made coffee, checked the weather one more time, and drove toward Denton. It was already 81 degrees at sunrise, not a cloud in the sky. By 8:30 in the morning, the parking lot at Ironside was already half full. Suits and lanyards, briefcases and conference folders. Security at every entrance checking credentials. I watched from the park across the street with binoculars and a coffee. I wasn't really drinking. Our people were in position. Ree was near the south side of the building, panels already set. Imani was parked on the access road with her phone and 3 media numbers ready to dial. Zola had the documentation table set up under a canopy in the park, organized by category bound and labeled. We had folding chairs, portable fans running off a generator, and 3 large coolers of cold water. The 3 engineers from the Ohio Society had arrived at 8 Miami and gone inside with their conference badges. They didn't know us, and we didn't know them. That was the point. Carl Maddox had gone in with the state inspector delegation at 70:45. He'd texted me one word when he cleared security, ready. By 9:15, the outdoor temperature was 91 degrees. Inside the building, with the HVAC running full load, it was probably comfortable. For now. Harmon opened the conference at 9:30. Maddox relayed short updates through the morning, presentations on industry standards, vendor displays, Nets working over catered breakfast. Harmon working the room, shaking hands, playing the part of a man who had built something worth being proud of. Nolan Harmon was in the front section near the stage. Young, well-dressed, conference lanyard with a speaker ribbon on it, ready for his moment. At 11:52, Ree sent a single text, running warm. At 12:09, the transformer made a sound like something heavy dropping onto concrete. One short impact, then nothing. The building's emergency lighting came on, the air conditioning did not. I watched the lobby through the binoculars, people looking up at the ceiling, security personnel moving quickly toward the exits and then outside toward the equipment. Ground staff coming around the south corner of the building. Everyone moving fast looking for the problem, finding nothing more interesting than a hot transformer on a hot day. Maddox texted, Harmon telling everyone to stay calm. Power will be restored shortly. Keynote proceeds as scheduled. Of course it did. Harmon wasn't going to let 2 years of setup for this moment evaporate because of a mechanical inconvenience. By 12:45, the conference staff was distributing bottled water. Jackets were coming off. People were standing near the windows even though the windows didn't open. The temperature inside had climbed to 85 degrees and was still moving. By 1:15, it was 91 inside. Maddox texted that someone near the back had asked to move the keynote outside. Harmon declined. Nolan presented first. 10 minutes on modernizing safety culture in mid-size manufacturing. He was smooth, clearly rehearsed, comfortable on a stage. The room was sweating but still mostly seated. Then Glenn Harmon took the podium. He had his slides up, his talking points ready, his corporate delivery locked in. The title on the screen behind him read, Safety as a Core Value. He was sweating through his shirt, but his voice didn't waver. He'd built this presentation to impress regulators, and he was going to deliver it regardless of the temperature. I'll give him that. The man had nerve. At 1:32, a state inspector in the third row went down. Not dramatically, just folded forward in his chair. 2 people around him reacted immediately. Medical staff pushed through from the side of the room. I called Imani, now. She made 3 calls in 90 seconds. What happened next wasn't an evacuation so much as a pressure release. The crowd had been sitting in worsening heat for over an hour, and the sight of a colleague going down gave everyone permission to move. Security tried to direct people to a single exit that lasted about 4 minutes. Then it was just people finding the nearest door. They came out into 96-degree heat, and it still felt like relief after what was inside. Our team was across the street and ready. People spotted the canopy, the fans, the coolers. They crossed the road without much prompting. Within 15 minutes, we had well over 100 conference attendees, state inspectors, industry regulators, and 3 TV cameras in the park, everyone accepting cold water and shade while Zola walked small groups through the documentation laid out on the folding tables. The material was organized cleanly. Falsified inspection reports alongside the originals, financial records showing the diverted maintenance budget, medical documentation from 2 facilities where the pressure valves had failed, a timeline of the 9 employees who had been pushed out after raising safety concerns internally. People were reading it carefully, the kind of careful you get when someone has just spent an hour sitting in a hot room because a building's systems failed, and they are now holding paperwork explaining why those systems were allowed to fail. Maddox moved through the crowd with 2 of his inspectors, collecting statements, directing people to specific documents, doing the work he'd been trying to do for 2 years. Then Ray walked across the street. He didn't make a speech. He didn't need to. He just stood there in the middle of that crowd, and when people recognized him from the summary sheet Zola had included in each packet, they looked at him the way you look at something that has just become real. Someone asked him what it was like in that storage room. Ray thought about it for a second. About what it felt like in your conference hall just now, he said. Except I couldn't leave. Nobody said anything for a moment after that. Carl Maddox walked over to Nolan Harmon about 10 minutes after the crowd settled into the park. Nolan was still standing near the building entrance, conference lanyard around his neck, looking like a man trying to calculate whether he could still salvage the afternoon. Maddox held up one of the quality override forms, the ones with Nolan's signature, and asked him plainly loud enough for the people nearby to hear whether that was his signature and whether he understood what those forms had authorized. Nolan's face went the color of old chalk. He started to say something about being unaware of the downstream implications. Maddox let him finish, then told him he'd need to come inside and make a formal statement. 2 other inspectors fell in on either side of Nolan as they walked back toward the building. Glenn Harmon came out about 20 minutes later. He had 2 security staff with him and was moving toward the executive parking area with the practiced calm of a man who had handled difficult situations before and expected to handle this one the same way. He stopped when he saw the cameras, stopped again when he saw me. We looked at each other across the parking lot, maybe 40 feet between us. He'd spent 2 months calculating exactly how much pressure it would take to make me disappear quietly. He'd gone after my job, my reputation, my father's care situation. He'd figured that was enough. He'd been wrong about what kind of man he was dealing with. I didn't say anything, didn't need to. State police officers were already coming around from the side entrance, and Maddox was behind them, and whatever Glenn Harmon had planned to do with his afternoon was no longer his decision to make. The weeks after the conference moved the way these things move when the right people finally have the right paperwork. Quickly, and then all at once. Ironside Valve and Pump Corp was placed under state supervision and ordered to halt production pending a full safety audit. Criminal negligence charges were filed against Glenn Harmon and 2 other executives. The pressure valve failures were connected to equipment malfunctions at a regional hospital and a nursing home in the southern part of the state. People had been hurt. The district attorney used the word manslaughter in the press statement. Nolan Harmon was charged separately for his role in authorizing the override forms. His attorney was already arguing he hadn't understood what he was signing. That argument was going to have a hard time in front of a jury holding copies of the actual forms alongside the incident reports from the 2 facilities. The identity theft case they'd been building against Ray got dropped. Ree's original documents made it impossible to sustain. Ray and Donna moved back to Denton 3 months later. Donna's treatment was covered in full under a settlement that also included back pay and damages for Ray, Ree, Imani, Holt, and 6 of the other 9 former employees on Zola's list. My father stayed at Meadowbrook. Tanner had locked that file tight enough that nobody touched it again. The back pay and settlement I received covered what I needed. Lily started school in September without having to delay a single semester. Pre-med, full schedule, exactly what she'd planned. Carl Maddox called me in October. The state legislature was drafting new whistleblower protections for industrial workers, modeled partly on what had happened at the conference. He offered me a consulting position with the new Industrial Safety Compliance Division they were building out of Columbus. I took it. In November, Ray called me on a Tuesday evening. We hadn't talked in a few weeks. He asked how the new job was going. I told him it was different from factory work, but that I was getting used to it. He asked about Lily. I told him she'd aced her first round of exams. He said that was good. We talked for maybe 10 minutes about nothing in particular, the way you do when things have settled back down and the crisis is far enough behind you that you can just talk. Before he hung up, he said, "You didn't have to come in early that morning." I told him I was just getting coffee. He laughed. We said goodbye. That was enough. I'm not a man who tells stories about himself. Most of the guys I've worked with over the years aren't either. You do the job, you go home, you don't make it into more than it was, but here's what I kept coming back to all those months. Glenn Harmon looked at Ray Alcott and saw a problem to manage. He looked at me and saw a 20-year lifer who would fold because he needed the paycheck. He had every advantage: lawyers, connections, 20 years of practice making people disappear quietly. What he didn't have was an accurate read on us. If you're in something like this right now, a Glenn Harmon, a system that's counting on your silence and your isolation, find the people around you who are watching and waiting. The Zolas, the Rexes, the Holts, they exist. Gather your evidence and protect it. Look for the person with actual authority who has been trying to move on this longer than you know, and then pick your moment, because they always give you one. They get comfortable, they plan a conference, they put their name on a keynote about safety. You'll know it when you see it. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've been through something like this at work, say so in the comments. You are not as alone in it as they want you to think.